For the 4th week of the Crusade campaign, we need the TTTSCCS1Info workshop again for the Derelict World Mutator card, unless you have access to the Beyond the Veil book. But personally, I always like to have access to everything in game. So once that's loaded in, pull out the Derelict World card. For this video, I'm also going to pull out the narrative just so we can read it and delete the rest. Then you can go ahead and bring in the week 4 mission you are playing. So with the standard mission first. The narrative for this week: having found sites with interesting archaeotech, the race is on to control them for acquisition or destruction. 2 sections of each battle force fight inside the ruined structures, while the third tries to hold enemy reinforcements from getting inside as well. For the standard mission, we have Core Rulebook's Apply Case mission. I chose this map to represent searching a tomb for an ancient relic or tech. You can load in the DZs using the FTC base, because it is part of the normal Core Rulebook. So just go to the Crusade ones, back to Supply Case, there we are. 4 markers are placed, you can see them under there at the moment. I have to unlock them to get them out. So the 4 markers will be placed by the players, starting with the attacker. They have to be 6 inches from a table edge and 6 inches from other markers. Now, so for the mission objectives, a recent FAQ on the Core Rulebook in the Warhammer community website has altered the second mission objective. You can refer to the Crusade announcement in our Discord this week for an image of the change. Or you can go onto the Warhammer 40k Community Core Rulebook FAQ to read it yourself. So the objectives are 10 points for controlling 1 or more markers, 10 points for controlling 2 or more markers is the one that's been changed from what it was to controlling 2 or more markers, and 10 points for controlling more markers than your opponent. Unlike some of our other missions, this mission cannot be scored in the first battle round, and the victor simply obtains 1 extra RP to spend after the match. The mutator effects in play for this week. Players cannot roll dice with the command reroll stratagem. Vehicles and biker units have to subtract 3 inches from their movement, which seems a bit strong for short distance moving vehicles and a bit weak for long distance moving vehicles anyway. But that's what we're doing this week. Before the game, players need to roll 3d3 to pick 3 further effects in play from the combat conditions tables, 1, 2, and 3. I suggest placing this effects card at the end of the map to help you remember things that are occurring, and put whatever dice rolls you get on top of it. 3, etc., etc. Maybe use a different coloured dice so you can see it more easily. I will save the time now and let you read through these effects yourself. That apply to you, because only 1 from each category will apply to your match. And there's no point learning them all if you're not going to need to know them all. Some of you might be interested in reading them anyway. Or keep up long enough for you to read them now. Or you can just pause the video. There are also 2 additional stratagems available here for this week's game. The 2 CP one is before your opponent rolls their morale test, you can use this stratagem to make 1 additional model flee for every model that leaves the battle from failing that morale test. For 1 CP, when a model dies within 6 inches of a terrain feature with the ruined category, roll 1d6. On a 2+, that unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. The first to me seems overly costed and very situational, with the second combatant condition hollowed out, making it slightly less situational by making it easier for people to make enemies fail morale tests. So if you roll that one, that stratagem might be actually worth using occasionally, but without it, it's probably not going to be a good stratagem. The 1 CP one, on the other hand, the second one, I feel could have a large impact on games, especially on the standard map mission, because most of these terrain is ruins. The rubble terrain clarification is on cards available to read if needed. reminding you that a model must be on a piece of rubble, partially, to get the light cover, as was the case in the anomalous reading mission from week 1. The D3 model wound stratagem is the shooting phase, so shooting armies will benefit from it more than melee armies or psychic armies. One final point before we look at the map 2 is the deployment zones in this mission are only 20 inches apart. It's 20. Yeah. And so that'll make the first turn easier to get charges off for melee armies. Not the usual 24. The battlefield twist. Starved guns. In your shooting phase, after shooting with a unit, roll 1d6. On a 1, models in that unit cannot make attacks with range weapons in both your and your opponent's next turns. So although it puts your opponent's next turn after your next turn, your opponent's next turn is actually going to be before your next turn. So I'd mention that and clarify it. Also, the Fulminating Fury effect. At the start of each player's turn, they roll 1d6 for each unit from their army that is on the uppermost floor of a ruined terrain feature with multiple levels, or is on the top level of an industrial structure terrain feature. On a roll of 1, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So, for that second mutator effect, you will either be on top of this one, on top of this one, on top of this one, or on top of here. For that one to be in effect for the rolls. See if anything bad happens to you. I believe that's everything for the first map and mission. So for week 4, for the specialist mission, we have Eldritch Encounter. I chose this map to represent the forces fighting to delay their opponents' team from reaching the tomb possibly containing ancient relics or tech. Note the river terrain effect is the same as the normal difficult ground clauses and conditions, except instead of being 2-inch penalty, it is a 3-inch penalty, and you do not have to measure up and down, just measure straight across with a 3-inch penalty. Top of the derelict world effects, as already discussed. This mission also requires half of your units, repeat, units, rounding down. It does not require half of your points to begin the battle in strategic reserve. So half of your units need to start the battle in strategic reserve, and it costs you no command points to put them into strategic reserve, unlike usual strategic reserve costs. There's only the 2 ruin pieces on this terrain, on this map, with that terrain trait for the stratagem and effects discussed before, mutator effects, and the mission objectives are from the second battle round you score points for killing more units than your opponent, and the end of battle scores 20 points if you have any units wholly within your opponent's deployment zone, irrespective of how many units they have in your deployment zone. So lifting them out of the way with the gizmo tool instead of deleting them, so you can bring them back at the end of the game. Again, the victor bonus is 1 extra RP point to be spent. That concludes this week's video. Hope you are well and have a good week and good game.